Hello and welcome to Africa in Demand, your gateway to everything Africa. I always like to make sure that people know that our guests are also incredible people that are speaking to something that they've not only studied but also experiences you've been to. So.
Most of the discord comes from just a misunderstanding.
Don't give excuse to things that you are supposed to be doing.
The truth is really finally starting to come out.
Africa in Demand, your gateway to everything Africa. Hello and welcome to Africa in Demand, your gateway to everything Africa. I'm your host, BC, and I'm so excited again to be back with you guys, having conversations about the diaspora, and of course, promoting a positive image of all things Africa. Today, my guest is Taya Rockson. I'm so excited to have Taya on the show. Taya, welcome. Taya is not only an activist, he's a radio host. He owns his own business. My gosh, the list goes on and on. He's done a TED Talk, just so many things that I'm impressed about by my guest today. Taya, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Bissy. And it's so good to always meet a fellow Nigerian, fellow Yoruba person.
Hello, Yoruba. Here we are. We are
BC. BC. We're going to have fun today. So I'm always excited to meet folks from the diaspora, but especially Nigerians and especially Yoruba folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Our names are dead giveaways, right? It's like you can't even try to act like you're not. Somebody hears your name, they're like, my Yoruba brother, Tayo.
Exactly. You know, it's so funny. People always ask me, hey, is your name really common back home? And because I've never heard of your name. And I'm like, no, there are many Tayos. In fact, it's not even just a masculine name. It's a unisex name.
It is. You're right. It actually is. I have a lot of female friends that are named Tayo. And I think I tell people the same thing. So I love the fact that, I mean, with an exception of like, as you immerse yourself more within the African community and you meet more people here, you realize like, if you're here, BC is not a common name, Taya is not a common name, but back home, it's like, you can hear BC called and everybody's turning their head because you're like, okay, I'm not just in a unique space now.
Right.
That makes a difference. Well, Taya, I always like to make sure that my audience knows that I'm bringing on guests that are not only experts in the field that I'm going to be, interviewing you on, but also people that are passionate about, the things they do and why they do it. So just so that people hear directly from you, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do.
I describe myself as a cultural translator and a polymath in progress. So I'll break it down. The reason I describe myself as a cultural translator is because personally, I grew up in 5 countries and 4 continents. So outside of the professional realm, I was always in between cultures. My dad was a diplomat, so we moved around often. And I found myself in and out of different cultures, trying to navigate life. And as I was navigating life, it led me down this professional path I'm on now, where I run a diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility firm, which focuses on helping companies connect across cultures, fight against systemic oppression and other forms of suppression. And that's why I always say culture translator, but a polymath in progress, because a polymath, for those that are wondering what that is basically a Renaissance person. And so you're Nigerian. When I grew up, we often had limited options, right? They'll say lawyer, doctor, engineer, or failure.
Oh, yeah.
Ironically, I wanted to be a basketball player, but I was
so failure.
Yeah, failure.
That fell into that category.
They didn't even take me seriously. I did well in school, but they didn't even take me seriously. So when I came here, it was like, Dad wanted me to be a lawyer. Mom wanted me to be a doctor, but in my head, I was still harking this MBA dream. But I eventually unlearned that. I do think tradition is great, but I think there are many things we need to unlearn about tradition. And I believe that we are limitless. So when I say polymath in progress, I study many fields. I'm a professor, I'm a speaker, I'm a researcher, writer, poet, also consultant and podcaster. So I straddle the fields of media, education, and workplaces. And I felt freer the moment I let myself believe that I could do all these multiple things because I have so many interests. So yeah, that's who I am as a person.
I love it. I love everything about it, because I find that, especially as people who are from African descent, there's always that struggle, right, of trying to be true to yourself and then trying to be true to who you just genetically are made up to be, the gifts and talents that you have in you. And I love that. I love the fact that you said, I allowed myself to be free, because I think in being free, you become your authentic self. And in your authentic self, you can do limited things, you know, I mean, you can do unlimited things, should I say. And so kudos to you on everything that you do, and just being able to make a lifestyle out of it and a career that actually does something to make a change in the world, you know. So I love that. Now, I see back there your Lakers 23. I see a fellow LeBron's fan. Okay. I like
it. So I'm not a Lakers fan, I'm a LeBron fan. I got to clarify, because I have the Miami Heat jersey. I have the Cleveland jersey on that side. You can't see it. And I have a bunch of LeBron shoes littered here. But I've been, like you, a stan, but I've followed him since he was in high school. So there you go. So
then we're on the same page. I too am not a Lakers fan. I am actually a LeBron fan. I became a LeBron fan when he came on the scene, because prior to that, I was actually a Celtics fan. So where he went, I went. After all the old heads fell off of the Celtics, I just couldn't belong anymore. Like the people that I liked were not there anymore. So LeBron became interesting. And before you knew it, it was like, I couldn't believe he went to the Lakers, but I get it. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're a Boston fan. I'm thinking.
I never liked the Lakers, but he's there. So I'm a him fan. That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
so you talked about basketball, right? That was something you wanted to do. So how did you go from wanting to be a basketball player to now doing what you do? Like, where was that shift, and how did you escape not being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, pharmacist? Yeah.
So, you know, the first decade of my life, we spent it under the regimes of Abacha and Babangida. And for those that are listening, those were two military rulers, dictatorships, and Abacha was particularly horrible. And so, you know, it directly affected us, because when they were doing postings, sometimes it would be based on your tribal language, or your tribe, basically, your ethnic group. Yep. And we were, you know, Yoruba at the time, and, you know, a lot of people from different tribes. And so we just didn't get posted for a while. And so we were just there. But I remember thinking I used to watch Nelson Mandela a lot. Nelson Mandela in 94, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, it was just this man that I've always been fascinated by, because he was someone that looked like me, that was fighting for oppression. And then he did what he said he was going to do. He had one term and then he left. And then even when the inauguration happened from, Islami Abubakar to Obasanjo, he was in attendance. And I was thinking, you know, in the back of my head, I felt like if I could do something like this, I could do that. So I felt like, even though I didn't know how to articulate it then, if I wasn't going to be a basketball player, I'll do something along those lines. But I fell in love with basketball when we moved to Burkina Faso.
Yes.
My
so
dad.
You mentioned that, right? You've lived in five
countries. Yes.
And I know what Greece, you know, I actually want to hear that story, because there's Burkina Faso, there's Greece. You know, I got to hear the story of how you got lost in Greece.
No, see, this was even a school trip, right? So it wasn't even, it was a school trip I took in Virginia, but it was Burkina Faso, Sweden, Vietnam, United States. Those were like the prominent countries. And then we went to Greece on a school trip, and I can share that story. But with the basketball thing, when I came to Burkina Faso, I was this skinny Nigerian kid with a thick Nigerian accent in a French-speaking country in an American international school, going through puberty. I was 10 years old, and I was sharing with you earlier that I'm more introverted than I look. I'm an ambivert, but, you know, I have those energies, and I was having a hard time fitting in. It was a very small school. Everybody knew each other. I always loved sports, you know, before I love football, the real football. I love the other football too, so don't come for me. But football at that time was my favorite sport. But I noticed the people around me were playing basketball, people I wanted to be friends with. And so I went to the library and I just started studying. That's my weird way of picking up the game. So I studied everything. You know, the fundamentals, the history. I picked up all the magazines. I knew all the current players.
Because that's what normal 10-year-olds do, right?
Well, I'll tell you, and as I'm telling my story, you're going to see the clues here. You know, me fascinated with Nelson Mandela, me being interested in research to find something. This is exactly what I do now. But as a 10-year-old, I was just that kid that would do that. And at the time, Allen Iverson was my favorite. You know, LeBron hadn't yet come into the league, but Iverson was my favorite because he just did what he wanted to do. And so I eventually got the best basketball player to teach me because I wanted to be able to translate what I was doing, what I was learning about on the court. And I just loved the fact that I could connect to people, and I just felt free. For any athlete, I've always played sports. When you are in your element, you feel like you can do anything there. It's a freeing experience. And so I knew then I wanted to be one, and I would say to my parents, and they would just laugh like, okay, yeah, this is what they say in that moment. And when I came back to Nigeria for boarding school, we don't have basketball camps the way they have in America. So I went to boarding school, and I didn't want to believe that my dream was going to definitely die if I didn't practice. But I thought in my head, like, oh gosh, maybe one day I'll think of it. And so when people ask me what I wanted to be, I would just say what my dad was. Diplomat. Yeah, I want to be a diplomat.
Right. That way they don't come for you, because I'm sure like basketball players like, what's the word that they normally use? Abomination. And
exactly.
A basketball player. What is that? Like,
and it was the thing for me was I'm the oldest, and I also have all these expectations of me, but I also did well in school. So people would never even think of all these things. I mean, I wasn't like the top student, but I was like an A, B, I'll get those things there. I was good enough to.
You kind of had no choice, right? You're Nigerian. Yeah. Like, if it's not an A or a B, and even a B is like,
I was one of those like, hey, you can do a little better. I mean, you're getting like maybe 3 Bs and 2 As and 1 C. No, you can do a little better, but at least you didn't get all Cs.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting though, because I mean, I can only imagine that the culture shock you had to go through to assimilate every time you moved weighed heavy on you, trying to figure out who you felt you wanted to be. But it sounds like in the end, you took all of that and found a way to bring it together. Yeah. And what you've learned from it really has now shaped who you are and what you do, right? And so I kind of want to take this into, how I actually found you. So just for most people, I was looking on LinkedIn, which I am guilty of not really spending a lot of time there. And it is a very fascinating place to network. I think when you're looking to mingle with like-minded people or just, like explore. And so, I'm looking and I'm actually doing some research for my, full-time, and I see you and I'm just like, diversity and inclusion. And so I proceed to just, do my homework on you, my investigative research, and go, who is this guy? What does he do? Is he legit? What's the thing? And I find this TED Talk and I'm just like, pause. I know it takes a lot to get here. So let's do some homework. And I stumbled across this TED Talk where you talked about embracing the art of diplomacy. Yeah. And I have to say that I was fascinated. I think I've watched it a few times because there are little nuggets of your story that you told that really made me think about things in so many different aspects, not just from a working perspective, but from a life perspective, from a relationship perspective. So I want to take that and kind of go from where you were talking about your basketball and how you started to do all this research and you befriended someone in Burkina Faso and you started to learn that, but then the lessons that you picked up from that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about first, how did this TED Talk come about? And that's an accomplishment in itself. And then the story of what and why you wanted to share that message.
At that moment in my life, people will always look at me and wonder how I got here. And I always tell them a lot of failures. At that moment in my life, I had gotten fired for the second time. I launched my company in 2014. And this was 2 years after I had this near-death experience in Virginia and decided to move and quit my job, which was unheard of, and then come down in my visa status just so I could pursue freedom. And I knew that New York City reminded me of Lagos, where I'm from. Yes. And so for anyone listening, if you realize you're at that point where you're not happy with your career, you want to do something, look into changing your environment. And so I want to change my environment. And in America, if you're not a citizen, you either get married, you get another job, or you go to school. And so my plan was, if I say MBA, I wouldn't have questions from my parents because that's to them, it's another education.
Yeah. Oh, he's going higher ground.
Yeah, higher up. And I knew that I was going to. I knew that I just needed some time to really experiment. And so the 2 years of the MBA was a good process for me. So when you know, by the time the TED Talk came around, I had graduated. I did well with my MBA, but I made this puzzling decision to my parents where I didn't go to any of the internships offered because I didn't want to take any job where I would be tied down without, you know, being able to be free. When you have a near-death experience, you have a wake-up call because you realize that life is shorter than you think it is. Yeah. And then you're all of a sudden thinking about what you could have done. And my thought was, I didn't even do anything else I was going to do. I am inspired by Nelson Mandela, and I'm like in a job I hate. So I had launched the podcast. The podcast was around for about 3 years by the time that I was applying for TEDx Talk, and it was doing well, but I wasn't getting paid. Yeah. But I enjoyed it. I knew I enjoyed it. And it really gave me this insight into what I could do. And occasionally people would invite me to come speak. They said, we really like your podcast and your style of communicating. Do you think you could talk about that? And I was like, yeah, I could talk about that, And then I started realizing that this cultural translating I'm talking about, I had the gift of translating experiences, my lived experiences and things I observe into frameworks. And I started proactively pitching people. And I would pitch TEDx Talks because I knew that I didn't want to continuously pitch organizations without being able to be found, right? It's a long process when you're doing like, okay, you're going to get on people's radars. I also want people to find me like you found me.
I was going to say, because that's how I felt. Very smart. I like that strategy. There's something there, guys. So if you're
I studied marketing. So that was my degree and my MBA. So I wanted to put myself in a position where I was simultaneously being looked for but it wasn't happening for 2 years. And then Trump got elected.
Yes, he did.
And then because I had been writing this stuff since 2012, and then I just, for some reason, when I was pitching this time, I said, look, I think I have something on how to bring people together or why we're divided. And then I applied to multiple TEDx Talks with the same idea. And then 2 eventually came back and said yes. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I can't do the same talk for 2 people. And then that year I ended up having 3 TEDx Talks, but it was a story of persistence because I had just gotten fired the second time. Wow. And my visa thing was running out, and I was like, it's now or never. You got to really figure out if this is going to happen. You're going back to Nigeria. And so, for some reason, God or whoever you believe in, it was like, I've been preparing you for this. Yeah. You have all these stories. And so I did the talk, and that wasn't even the talk I was supposed to do.
Wow.
I did that. That talk I came up with I came up with that talk less than a week before that event because I had pitched them another idea since I already did the first talk with another TEDx place, and they didn't like that idea. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a week away. What do you want me to talk about?
So in 1 week, look, I'm a believer. So I say, look at God. You had 1 week to prepare, and then you came up with this powerful message.
Yes. Yeah. And it was, I have to give credit to one of my friends. She was just like, hey, why don't you just talk to us about your experience growing up? And I was like, okay. And then I just started writing. I was like, hey, I grew up as son of a diplomat. Let me talk about the art of diplomacy. Yeah. And then I think it
goes back to your authentic self, right? Because your best story is your true story. It's your you story, right? And I think sometimes we forget that each of us have a unique story. Yes. There might be some similarities, right? Like we were talking earlier about our lack of sleep, but still there's different ways that your story starts and the things that happen in between it, and then how that story ends. And I think sometimes sharing your authentic story is sometimes the most powerful one because it's genuine. And I think people could see the passion or drive or the pain, the hurt, whatever it is that they're supposed to experience, it will come out when it's authentic.
No, that's so true. And that's why my mission statement is use your difference to make a difference, is the title of, my book and my company. But it was something I recognized after going through those failures, because even when I was failing, being broke, fired, and all these things, I realized I was in a city that I loved and I was doing what I loved. And there was a certain freedom that came with that, because I don't know where the faith came from. I grew up as a Christian, I guess. So it must be, maybe it's that. But
at the right time.
Yeah, I just believed, that I was going to be able to do it. I remember going to a grocery store. I have a bit of a sweet tooth, and I wanted to get gummies at one point. And my card just it declined. And I thought to myself, I can't even get gummies. I can't even get gummies. And then I remember I took a snapshot of the decline on, the phone that I had at that time. And I said, you're going to look back at this day and laugh. And that was it. That was just my mindset at the time. I just knew that the stories I was telling were important. I couldn't have predicted any of these things. And so that's what happened. I had been doing this since the accident in 2012, been writing. I didn't know what it would become. I didn't know that it would end up becoming diversity, equity, inclusion. I was just following my curiosity and being consistent. And then, I just started acting. Yeah.
I love that. And I think from your story, a lot of what I've heard so far is we go through failures, and you said through several failures. And I think people sometimes are so afraid to fail that they don't just do it. And I know I've been guilty in my life of always going, it's got to be perfect. But I've come to embrace it's okay. Failure is where you learn, because if you keep doing it, eventually you're going to get it right. Because if you don't fail, then you don't learn anything to be able to know what to do better, right? And so we don't always have to have it together. But then I also heard in your story that you didn't linger on the negative things that happened or the bad experiences. It sounded like you just kept focusing on forward movement. And I think that in itself speaks to the testament of why your story is so rich and powerful, is that you could have just said, you know what, that's it, forget it. Let me just move back home. It's fine, whatever, right? But you just kept saying, yes, this is bad, but I need to do something to make a difference. So whether it's that change of environment, taking a snapshot of that decline and just telling yourself that this is something you're going to laugh at, is like that positive reinforcement to a negative situation to keep moving forward. I love that. So you now you've done this TED Talk. And in this TED Talk, I took some notes because there's some things that you said that I think are very powerful. As someone who grew up, in Nigeria for a small part of my life, but then also grew up here in the US, I've always had this, battle of trying to communicate between two different experiences of groups of people, one being Africans and our mindset, the way we grew up, and the morals and values that are so ingrained in the fabric of who we are. And then growing up here in the US, where it's like put your mind to, you can do anything you want, not just these 5 things that your parents say you should be doing. But then also the communication of understanding the mindset of someone that grew up here and maybe had grown up experiencing slavery and oppression, or just, the different cultures versus back home, where, yes, there are different faces, but the majority of the faces, Africans and people there, especially in like Nigeria, right? Yeah. In your TED Talk, you talked about embracing the art of diplomacy, not just from the standpoint of diplomacy, but there was a story you told about how growing up, your dad would read the newspaper and you started to mimic the things that he would do. And then you ultimately also started to ask questions as you grew up to understand people. And you talked about basketball being a way that you found to connect and actually make friends in a place where you felt like you were lost and by yourself, you knew no one. So talk about how that makes a difference in what you do now when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and just that piece that you felt was something you learned to how to better embrace our differences.
I learned the power of observation from what, my dad used to do. Because when you were a diplomat, you get posted out to the country. You have to collect and gather information. You really have to understand the importance of being in an environment, being an active listener. And he would do these things that I didn't always appreciate until I needed to do it. And I just noticed that he was doing these things so that he could be able to translate information to Nigeria and, identify the opportunities. And then when I started to look at my lived experience, for me, I feel like I've been blessed to live, to be Black on 4 continents. Now, it's come with a lot of experiences, but I'll give you an example. I came to the United States when I was 17. in a town called Lynchburg, Virginia.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And so when I first heard the name, I thought, wait, what?
Why are we going there?
Yeah, but it's named after this guy. I think his name is John Lynch. And I came to the largest conservative university in the world, Christian University. And this was the place that my parents felt safe enough to leave me, because this is the first time I was going to be in another continent from them.
Yeah.
Now, I was here during Obama's years. And so because of the way I sound, I started getting treated like an African American. People used to argue with me about whether I was Nigerian, and I used to find that frustrating at first. So I immediately was straddling the African and diaspora, Nigerian and diaspora, as well as African American world, because I was in a school that didn't like the fact that Obama was about to win. Mm-hmm. And then the professors and people started treating me like I participated in ruining the country. And then I was like,
I mean, of course you did. Look at, the color of your skin by default.
Yeah. Like, this kid, because I remember the day Obama won, there were a lot of Black people who were just on the streets, like, people were dapping each other. I remember thinking, man, I didn't even vote, but yes. And then on one side, you could see a lot of white folks who were just shaking their head at us, just cheering. And it was really that type of energy where these are the people that were supposed to be teaching you and be your roommates, where you started navigating these different lines. And then I would go to restaurants and everywhere would be silent. Just because I walked in. I started experiencing all these little like microaggressions in different places. And I was like, whoa, this is such an interesting thing. It's such a shift. And then I became the, we can be friends with you. You're not like the other Black people.
Yeah.
And then I just started having all these experiences. And so when I moved to New York, it was a whole different set of experiences. You find a lot of people from different backgrounds, right? Different parts in the world. But then I also remember one time where I got, I was in the elevator. I've been in the elevator twice where someone was like hiding for their lives. They covered themselves. They were plastered in the corner. I've been followed. I've been, profiled, all these things. And I just kept thinking, I remember being followed in Vietnam as well, but that was for different reasons, because they hadn't seen a lot of Black people. And so they would follow us to try and see if they could rub the Black off our skin, some of the people. And I just thought, I've had all these experiences being Black. And I got to use what I learned from growing up with my dad, just turn these things into lessons, right? Maybe not as a diplomat, but to show people that, the way we see the world and the way we interact with people plays a role in the society we create. And just me going from an experience where I could be celebrated in a room to be feared in another room, depending on where I am, is something that I want to really open people's minds on, because I think a lot of people think that, you're just crying all these things. It's not really a big deal, whatever. I have this Black friend, And I wanted to separate that mindset and have people really reflect on how society sometimes creates these social constructs or contracts where we see people based on where they come from. Because if anyone told me, if someone made fun of you sleeping with lions and monkeys, yes. If someone followed you, yes. If someone profiled you, yes. If someone's feared you, yes. If someone, whatever. And so I was like, well, I'm the same person in each of these situations. The only difference is the color of my skin there. And you haven't had any form of conversation with me.
Yeah.
And you've made that decision. And so I felt blessed and unique after working through the anger to put myself in a position where I could translate these experiences to others. And I felt like the lessons I learned from my dad as a diplomat were those observational skills that I have now turned into action items.
I love that you actually said after working through the anger, because I think people assume that there's not a process sometimes that you have to go through to get to that place. When you are trying to be on the side of educating and opening people's eyes to those conversations, there are people that are still in different stages of that process where they're still in the angry phase. So they sometimes can't understand how you can be so, not okay, but like be so calm in the storm and sea of all of this stuff that happens daily. And I think, the reality is that there's layers, right? I'm sure there are days when things happen, like so many things that have happened over the last year, where that anger maybe gets reignited. But then the question is, what do we do about it? And I think, like you said, being able to take that and then go, let's have a conversation about it, right? You talked about listening a lot. You talked about having conversations and, why it's important to understand the differences around us and being an active listener so that to me, when you say that, there's like a science, right? I always look at so there's a science to being diplomatic. Like diplomacy and people who do that for a living around the world don't just get like, oh, here you are, you're a diplomat. There's so many lessons that it seems like you picked up from your dad that he had to learn in order to figure it out here, because it's like you are who you are. He's a Nigerian man. Yeah. He's going into this other culture. And so even as a kid in those different places, what are some things that, whether it's you realize it then or later, that you feel that you now use to better communicate, and what can we in general do? And what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want us to kind of talk about that before we wrap up. Okay. So we'll be right back. You're watching Africa in Demand, your gateway to everything Africa.
Was the importance of coming together for a common goal. You see, a lot of my new teammates, they spoke different languages, they had different accents, and they came from different parts of the world. But we realized that in order for us to win, to grow, and to be a good team, we had to leverage our unique talents for that one goal. Now imagine what could happen if we applied that to communities today. Imagine what could happen if we learned how to leverage each of our unique differences and talents to solve a problem today. Understand the differences around you and find the commonalities that exist within them.
And we're back. If you are just joining us, hopefully you aren't. I've been talking to Rockson. He is not only an educator, a speaker, a writer. He speaks on diversity and inclusion and has his own company, just so many things. And I hope you guys get a chance to really watch this whole interview. So before we went to break, we were kind of talking about the lessons that you've learned, Tayo, and how you have really brought that to a platform where you speak on embracing our differences and, really just understanding that we're probably more alike than we think, but we just need to open up more. So let's talk about that. What are some things that you think we can do better at, and give some examples of maybe how you've done that even in your career and personal life?
So we've been talking about my pops a while, but I'm very similar to my mama, my queen mother, as I like to call her. Yes. But I got the art of compassion from her. Right. So if I got the diplomacy from my dad, it was compassion from my mom. And that's really what has fueled me through these moments, because in terms of anything that I'll give in the form of a tip, I always tell people to understand their triggers, because I believe that the key to change behavior is understanding your triggers. And throughout my life, when I started feeling like I could be limitless, I started on learning things that I believed without even understanding. Like, why would I be a failure if I'm not a lawyer, doctor, engineer, failure? What is wrong with being angry? There's that stereotype of angry Black man, angry Black woman. And so I took my anger back, right? And I said, it's okay to be angry. In fact, I deserve to be angry. And
which is technically taking your power back, right?
Exactly. And I started reframing that. Before, I used to suppress it. I was so good at recognizing when I walked into a room, because I work out and sometimes I go in a room, I've seen fear. I've seen people drain their face. It is, if you haven't experienced this, and if you're not over 6 foot Black guy, you don't recognize what fear can happen when people are hiding their kids from you, which has happened to me, because you happen to be wearing a tank top instead of a suit. It is, you quickly know how to code switch, I guess is the term. And so I started realizing that I had a right to be angry, and it's okay for me to be angry. And so I started describing myself as an angry optimist. And the reason I do the things that I do today is because I'm angry. I'm angry that the world is this way, but I'm also optimistic that we can change. And so once I realized that I could be those two things at the same time, I didn't have to be one or the other, it helped me. And so for anyone listening, if you're in the diaspora, you're here in the United States, just own the emotions you have and actually feel them, right? Maybe there's some shame attached to the emotions that you have, but unlearn those things. If you are naturally angry, you're prone, you're emotional, own that that's who you are. and then really investigate the sources of those triggers that you have. And so for me, as I understood my triggers around injustice and bullying, coming from a personal experience of having been bullied in situations and having been ostracized in multiple situations, I found a certain sense of power in that because I started saying it more, and in our culture, they tell us to suppress our emotions all the time. I remember when I started going to therapy before, my mom was like, why you're telling them all your secrets? Huh? You cannot tell them all your secrets. Why do you want to tell them all your secrets? Don't you know that
going, do you want me to die and just hold them all inside? Like there's such a stigma or a shame thing that we attach to things like that.
Yes.
And it's not always healthy. And sometimes I think it's just because they don't know, right?
It's 100% that. And then Tarek, she loves it now, but I started talking about my panic attacks, right? I started talking about all these things. I had my first panic attack when I was 15 in Ibadan, in Nigeria. It's a city in Nigeria. And we didn't know what it was until, I don't know, they thought it was a heart attack. They took me to the hotel and all these things. But when I was reflecting, hospital, when I was reflecting, I realized why all these things were there. I was just always triggered. I have anxiety. We just talked about insomnia. We didn't have language for all these things. All these things were always things I dealt with. Like,
you'll be fine. Just go drink water.
Exactly.
Something like that.
That's what I'm saying. My tip for you is to really feel every emotion you have and understand your triggers. If you can give language to what you're feeling, you're going to feel freer. So when I could finally say I have panic attacks, and I remember the first time I shared that publicly, I had people DMing me, saying, thank you for sharing that. I've always thought that I couldn't say that. And they wouldn't put it in the comments. They would just DM me because there's still that stigma. Yeah. Same thing with the therapist and same thing with me even bringing up anxiety and insomnia. So I noticed that with the platform I have, whether it's my podcast or any of these things, when I started to say that more, I started to give permission to other people to do the same. And so if you're listening, that's what you should do. There's a narrative out there that Black folks around the world can only do so much. Yeah. And there are only enough space for them. But the more we unlearn that as a group and as a collective, where we say, no, it's okay, you can be that, you can be that, you can be that. It's okay. That doesn't mean you're this. Just because you have that, it doesn't mean this is that. I think there's so much freedom that comes with that because I honestly feel like we haven't even discovered our full potential as a group yet. Yeah.
And I agree. I agree with that statement. I think it's sometimes what happens is how we hold each other back from doing more is not only that we haven't discovered, but we haven't discovered the power that we have when we actually can come together and do those things as well.
100%. So that would be my piece of advice. There's so much power with owning, just owning who you are unapologetically, and even just being that person, that self, and just being okay to say, yeah, I want this, I want that, I feel this, I feel that, and I'm not less than. Yeah. Right.
So you now feel this, and you've discovered this about yourself. What do you think that does or has done for you when it comes to how you communicate with other people and how you relate to other people?
I think it lets people know that that they can be safe with me. Like there's a safe space. If there's safety in communication, you can almost discuss anything. And for many people, when they hear me proactively volunteer information by myself that maybe other people would have thought, you said that? They feel like they can do the same thing. And because I do so publicly, it really, I think it invites them it invites them to open up a little bit more. And that's honestly what it is. I don't know what the future
walls brings. Come down, right?
Yeah. I don't know what the future brings, but I do know that if I'm ever interacting with someone, or if I'm, when people invite me to speak or to consult in a company, I always want to come from a vulnerable place and with my authentic self. And so there are multiple diversity, equity, inclusion organizations, but the way that I approach mine is with my lived experience. I always lead with that. Yeah. And then even the mistakes I've made, I always lead with that too. Like, I made this mistake when I was here, but this is what I've learned from that. And I'm giving you a tool for you to discover what it is within yourself that you need to unlearn. I'm not going to just tell you what to do, because what I needed to do might be different from what you need to do, but I will tell you what can help you figure out what you need to do. And that's how I approach it. I'm usually providing information and action items. And so I think that gives people permission to feel like they can come into the room.
I was, and I'm not sure where I got this from, but your TED Talk specifically really mirrored a lot of what I'm trying to do with, another organization where there's something about making people not only feel included. So even when you're thinking about our diversity, but us wanting to be included, there's always this thing where it's like you feel like you're there. And yes, people have to, they don't have to, but people accept you because you've been invited into the room. But have you been asked to participate? I think is what I always look at as the biggest difference is we can all be invited into the room, but are we actively participating together, actively asking others to participate with us? Are we being intentional about being vulnerable and letting people know who we are so that we can have better communication and understanding? And so I was saying to a group of people this year that I ran across this quote. I'm really big on quotes. Like I could literally have a whole conversation using nothing but quotes. But this particular quote, said, there's one thing to invite people to the dance. There's another thing to actually ask them to dance, right? It's like you invite them and then they're standing on a wall and you're just kind of looking at them versus let me go and get to know them. Let me invite them. And I think that's what I loved about your whole basketball analogy of how you made friends. And then that turned into this big group of people from diverse backgrounds, meeting, playing together, and getting to know each other through something so unique as basketball. I love that. I think stories are really how we learn about each other. So I love that you do that a lot. So Taya, tell us what's next for you. And I say next in the sense of like, you're not already doing a lot, but like, what is one thing, if you could say that you really feel that there's still a lot of work to be done in this space that you want to continue to do? And then what are some things that maybe you are doing towards that now?
So I want to expand the stories of Blackness. That's my next project. I really feel like sometimes when we talk about Black, the Black culture, we don't expand it enough. And so I'm working on my second book, which I want to, bring in some of the experiences I've learned growing around the world. So there's that. Okay. And then I said I straddle the fields of education, workplaces, and media. So definitely want to do more in each of these fields. I want to be able to continue to redefine curriculums in schools so we can expand what we just talked about.
Yes.
I want to, in the media, I hope to be able to eventually have a Shonda Rhimes-like type of career where, you can executive produce. Where you can, produce media and all those things that really get those stories in. With my consultant firm, it's the same sort of thing, just continue to get into different fields and different, institutions where we can really expand or change people's mindsets about certain things. So, those are the things that I hope to continue to do and aim to,
Taya, thank you so much for joining us today. So I want to make sure that people get a chance to know how they can follow you. So first and foremost, tell us about your first book and how people can get that.
Mm-hmm. My first book is Use Your Difference to Make a Difference. You can get it anywhere books are sold. So make sure you type in Use Your Difference to Make a Difference. And my podcast is called As Told by Nomads. If you're into podcasts, you can find me anywhere at Rockson. So just type Ty Rockson. My website is tyrockson.com. My social media handles are Ty Rockson. So I'm pretty easy to find and looking forward to meeting you all.
Wonderful. Now, before we go, first and foremost, thank you so much for being on the show. I just love this conversation. I feel like we can keep talking more and more. So I hope you will not be a stranger to the show, but I always like to end with a little, like I'm doing something different this year. So this year, during COVID, I hope that everyone got a chance to tap into who they are and actually live their authentic self. I created a card game called the Pidgin card game. Mm-hmm. And this Pidgin card game is very much something for the West African, especially culture. And I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm going to see how well you are at your Pidgin English. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
This is where we switch it right from, are you ready to, are you ready?
Are you ready? So
I am going to put up some cards. Some will have music symbols, some won't. And you have to, with me giving you clues, guess what this word, acronym, line in a song is, etc.
Okay.
So, that's just an example. So are you up to date on your Afro beats, your music, all of that?
Yeah, but I am, but now I'm a little scared.
Okay, so I'm gonna go easy with you. I'm gonna start with some easy ones. So can you see this one?
Yeah, FGMP. Okay.
Okay, so this is something that you typically would say to a woman when she's really attractive, or in African culture we'll say this, look at this one.
Fine girl, no pimples. Yes. Oh,
Look at you. Okay, so here's another one. Now let's see if you can get this one. Now this one, I don't know how well your Pidgin is, so I'm gonna try. I've never said this one, but this is something when like you saw something and it really cracked you up, and you're like, maybe you're watching a video, a comedy show, and you're just like, there's some words I can't say. That's what I'm trying to. You're rolling on the floor, and you're just like,
oh gosh, I speak Pidgin, but this is like a lot of this is 5 words.
Okay. I don't know how I'm gonna give this one to you. Life won't kill me, die.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hey, it made the deck. Here we go. I'm gonna give you 2 more. This one is probably something I would say to you right now in this moment because of what just happened. The fact that you didn't get that.
See your life.
See your life.
See your life.
All right. So now I'm gonna hit you with some music. Let's see how well your Afro beats is. Let's see which music one can you give. Okay. So this one, okay, it's an Afrobeat song. It has a girl's name in it, and the artist is saying that the girl is treating them a certain kind of way. So the hook in the song says, I'm probably doing a horrible job of trying to get you to guess this because I'm trying to think of the name of, I can't tell you the name of the artist, but okay, yes, I can. So the artist used to go out with a girl named Chioma. He's a big artist right now. One of the top 3, I would say. So who are?
So is either Davido, Burna Boy, or
that guy?
Davido. Okay.
Yeah. So this is one of his songs, and in the songs he says, a girl's name that. Oh, this one's hard. I may not even get a chance to get you to guess this one. Let me.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying here. We got the artist.
Got the artist. Okay, I'm gonna move on from this one. I'm gonna see if you get this one. My last guest couldn't get this one right. She was shamed. She said, "Oh, I'm so ashamed." So these are 2 brothers. They both
B Square.
There you go. Very easy.
Yeah.
This thing happens when you're at a wedding. They spray. What do they do when you're on the dance floor? What's normally happening?
Oh, they always spray money.
Right. So this song was very popular at weddings and stuff because the minute it comes on, people just start to do that and they're singing it. You must.
Is this the title of the song?
It's the hook in the song. It's the hook. It's the one that you're always going to repeat. So think about what happens on the dance.
P Square has a wedding. So they have a song called "No One Like You," right? That's
that. But this one is more of an upbeat song, and it has to do with what you say happens on the dance floor. What do they spray on the dance floor?
They spray money. I'm trying to see.
So you must. Okay, when you go eat, what are you doing? When Africans eat, they say, "Come in."
Chop.
Look at the acronym.
So chop money. Chop more money. You know what chop? Oh, Josh.
You must.
Yeah. What is it? What is the other M? What is the other M?
Okay.
Chop more money.
Not more, but whose money?
Whose money is yeah? What's the more M? Chop more money. No, she said it's not more.
You know what I'm realizing? It's you new age people. You don't know P Square. Chop my money. You must chop my money.
I don't know P Square. I know P Square.
But you didn't get this.
I love P Square. I'm still not happy that
it's easy. I'm taking back your card. And you know why? Because of this particular acronym. I am taking your card.
I have right full citizenship. Okay.
This one right here. Okay. When you do something, Yeah, don't worry. You'll be thinking about it for the rest of the day. How can I?
Yeah, now I'm thinking about it.
All right, this is my last one for you. When you do something to somebody and they look at you and they go, like maybe they want to get you back, but maybe they're not going to, and they say to you they say this to you, like, that thing you did to me, okay, it's okay. I almost gave it away.
Yeah, so
look at the acronym. Look at the acronym.
Gosh, it's not gonna. It's not gonna.
There. When you did not intentionally do something, we would say,
No, that's no B there.
but you're close. You're kind of coming along the line. So you didn't do it, but maybe somebody else did. So you say, but you could.
You're gonna have to please give it.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
I didn't think it was that easy. I was expecting Pidgin. That was English.
Yeah, but it's still Pidgin. We don't say it's not your fault. We say it's not your fault.
I know.
Maybe I should pigeonize it more.
Yeah. Okay, fine. It's not your fault. But that was so literal. It literally was what you were saying.
It was right there.
I was like, it can't be that. I thought.
Well, as we know, Pidgin has many different textures. It's English, but it's all about the way we say it. Yes. Taya, thank you so much for joining
my money. I can't believe I didn't get.
Yes, you did not get Chop My Money. We're taking your Africa card. You've lost.
It's not possible to take anyone's African card.
We're taking a third of it. Oh, hopefully you come back to the show again to talk about some other stuff. Thank you so much for joining. Best of luck in everything you're doing. Please make sure you follow Taya. You see all of his handles listed here for you. And we look forward to having you again on the show. Thank you so much and Happy New Year to you. Thank you all for watching Africa in Demand, your gateway to everything Africa. We'll see you next time. Africa in Demand, your gateway to everything Africa.